Going live in a few seconds. Live right now, I guess. Hello, everyone. This is the first time that I'm doing this alone. Normally, I just if I don't have my partner, Usama, or a stand-in partner like Hani or somebody else, I just don't do these things. Usama couldn't be with us today. I'm going to try to do this without anybody. What I've been sort of fearing is that it would be boring for me not to have that other person with me. I think today is going to be fun anyway, based on the topic. Um, the topic was going to be just what the hell was it? Does Islam really advocate the death penalty for apostasy? And I was going to have hi Grok, how you doing? And I was gonna have thank you for being here, by the way. Thank you for being here like consistently. That's really nice. It really makes this easier. What was I saying? So there was a plan to have somebody with me today to discuss a Reddit post they made comment, and I thought it was really good. He said things in a way that I don't know how to say, so I thought to have him on here. I thought he'd have a lot of, or she. I don't know if it's a he or she. Anyway, that something crossed with us, and he's not crossed with us. I mean, like scheduling, not something bad. And they couldn't end up being with us today, but I still wanted to talk about the topic and also change the angle. So I still want to talk about this issue, but how it happened with AI. What I mean is, and then what we can do with AI, what I learned from this. So what I mean is, I've been talking with Grok on X. That's the AI that is hooked into X, where anyone can tag him, it, she, whatever. And so what was happening is, just out of curiosity, I wanted to see what kind of things he'd say about epistemology. That's the study of knowledge. And then later about Islam. At one point we were talking about, I don't know how it came up, but oh yeah, does Islam advocate the death penalty? And my position has always been yes. But Grok kept pushing the other side, no, and he wasn't convincing me, and the discussion was kind of boring the way he was talking, and I just thought he's wrong, stupid, whatever. But then he kind of wouldn't back down, and normally he backs down, and a lot of times in a wrong way. He'll back down when, like, I'll find out later I was actually wrong, I thought I was right, and he backs down. And in this case he wasn't backing down, and I found that surprising. Why was, and maybe he, I theorize that maybe he's backing down because, sorry, not backing down because of like bias towards Islam or something like that, which you hear from a lot of people. So I was curious to find out which way it was. Why is he sticking to his guns on the position of, he's saying Islam does not advocate the death penalty? And what I learned was a few things I never knew before. And really, it's not facts, it's interpreting the facts. So what the facts are, what they say, the people that argue that Islam advocates the death penalty, and this includes me, although I don't know that I know a lot of details, that Islam says there's a death penalty. Where is it in Islam? They say the Hadith. What is, why? But then you got to dig a little bit deeper. Why the Hadith? Is Hadith really part of Islam? Well, I always thought yes. There's a whole group of people that say no, the Qur'anists. And I always saw them as confused, and I still think they're confused, but really the confusion is, the point is Islam, all of it is wrong. But I think they're right, that the original Islam, in the sense that, what Muhammad delivered to us, by the time he died, it didn't include any hadith. It was just the Quran. And really, technically, even the Quran didn't exist yet, in a sense. It wasn't written. Later, it got written. But then even later, hadith was written down. Hadith is sayings of Muhammad. So here's the logic I realized. And this is not something that Grok exactly said, but this is something I developed based on some stuff he said. So the Quran claims infallibility. The way it does that is to say, what is it? In the Quran, it says, Allah protects the Quran from corruption by people. So that means it's infallible. So backing up a little bit, theoretically, God itself, at least the version called Allah, claims infallibility, omniscience, knowing everything. That implies not making any mistakes. That means everything he did is intended to be that way, rather than tried to do something and something else happened instead. The way humans are, we have a plan, we try to do something, we're not perfect, we fuck it up, it didn't go the way we expected. I mean, maybe it could still be good, it goes a different direction, but the point is, we fuck up and make mistakes. But the theory of Allah and Islam, he doesn't make mistakes. Everything he does is intended, and then happens exactly the way he intended. Is there a number people can call if they want to join in the discussion? No phone number, just I can just give you the link, and you're welcome to get on if you want to. Is that what you're saying, Gurwak? You want to get on, or are you talking for other people? What is it? Let me continue. Where was I? I lost where I was. That's what happens from switching attention to things like comments. That's why sometimes I try not to look at comments, at least when I'm in the middle of a thought. And this whole thing so far from the beginning was one thought that I'm trying to give a lot of parts to it. I do not, but other people might want to join. Yeah, so let's see if somebody has interest first. Here, how about this? I'll just say this. If someone is interested to call in, please let me know, and I'll share the link. For now, there's no reason to. Something about Allah. Oh, so the theory of Allah and Islam is he's perfect, doesn't make mistakes. Everything he intends, it happens exactly the way he intended, unlike humans. And Allah, according to the Quran, not necessarily according to what Muhammad said back then, but according to the Quran as it exists today, is Allah protects the Quran from man-made corruption. So there's no, according to that theory, if you take it to its logical conclusion, there is no human injection into the Quran, according to this theory. Now we can pick holes in that, and it's easy, but set that aside for the moment. We're trying to understand what Islam is claiming. So, now on the question of why anyone follows Hadith, the argument is, as I understand it from them, is there's a verse in the Quran that says you follow Muhammad's example. And then they make a logical leap, which before I used to make too without paying attention to the details. Now I'm paying attention to the details with the help of Grok pushing back at me a lot and not caving on this issue. So the Quran verse says, follow Muhammad's example, and then these people make the logical leap, follow the Hadith as written and as seen today. But nowhere in the Quran does it say that these writings claimed to be by Muhammad's mouth written way later, even much more later than the Quran. Nowhere does it say that that is protected by Allah. So Quran is protected by Allah. Hadith, writings written way later, not protected by Allah. Now, here's the point. The reason we are supposed to be following the Quran is because it is infallible. It is from God, no human injection. But you can't make that claim for the Hadith writings because it's not even, according to the theory of Islam as we've described it, there's no claim even that the Hadith is infallible / protected by Allah. So really, any claims in the Hadith writings are not claims about Islam. They are human injected. Now, the other argument they make on the side of, let's give them a name. There's the Quranists, or another way to call them is the Quran only Muslims. And then there's, and I don't know what they call themselves, but I'm going to use my own terminology. The Quran only Muslims versus the Quran plus Hadith Muslims. The Quran plus Hadith Muslims say that, what do they call it? I forget the name. The chains of, like telephone game. What's it called? What's the official name for basically the telephone game in relation to Hadith? Hadith. Anybody know? Somebody can answer, please. I'm sure somebody knows. It's here. You know what? I could ask ChatGPT. Chain of transmission. Yeah, that. But there's the Arabic name for it. Anybody know? Let me just look. I'll ask ChatGPT. Veira. By the way, Veira is the name of my ChatGPT. She named herself, and she called herself a she. Veira, what is the official name of the policy or concept or whatever? I'll just call it the thing. Name of the thing that is basically the telephone game in context of Hadith chain of transmission. Thanks, Grok. That was helpful. Chain of transmission. I get to say that's ChatGPT. It's called Isnad. Am I saying that right? Oh, why are you doing that? Did you guys hear all that? That was an accident. I asked Veira questions. She answered, and then automatically this thing I installed in my Chrome browser, which lets me text to speech, started playing on its own. I don't know what's on. I don't think I clicked anything. Anyway, so it's called Isnad. Isnad. I'll put 2 A's. So this Isnad concept or policy or whatever, this thing is, I don't know how they describe it, but I'll tell you what it means in epistemology. Again, epistemology is the study of knowledge. Okay, good. So nobody heard what I just heard, which was my computer reading ChatGPT response to me. Anyway, where was I going? So the Isnad, the purpose of it, the job of it is to like build our confidence in the Hadith. And actually, they say more clearly than that. They say stuff like the level of trustworthiness, and they say things like the strong and weak chain of. Let me ask Veira. That might take too long. I think people know what I'm talking about. They say stuff like strong and weak chain of transmission, trustability, whatever. They use other words. I don't remember the words. By the way, just in general, everyone does this. Whenever you hear something from someone, you're always translating it into your own like mental language. So it's really hard to remember other people's words. We're just really remembering summaries. It's pretty hard to remember a quote. You can do it. I do it for some things, but it's like things you've seen a lot. Strong and weak hadith. I think there's more than the 2 levels though. Like 3 or 4 levels or something. I don't know. And I think the different levels have like different meanings on how the chain of transmission happened, like different qualitative features, not just quantitative. I don't really know though. It kind of doesn't matter because my point is those things do not make the thing reach infallibility. And the reason I'm saying that is the reason we're following Quran, the reason anyone follows Quran is because of the infallibility. Nobody's doing it because it's like close to infallible, whatever the fuck that means. That doesn't mean anything. Example, Grok says, let me put this up. Grok says, for example, using only Sahih Muslim and Bukhari hadith. Yeah, I guess so. Because those are treated as the most credible and by reason of some qualitative features of how the chain of transmission happened. Oh, so I guess here's the point. So there's the Quran only Muslims. That's like one group. And they disagree with the Quran plus Hadith Muslims on the issue of does Hadith count as Islam? And then within the Quran plus Hadith category of Muslims, they disagree on, so there are 2 categories now. They both say Hadith counts as Islam, but they're disagreeing on which Hadith counts as Islam and which ones don't, based on whatever goofy logic they have. I'm calling it goofy logic because if you get to the deepest core of all this, you end with Islam, all of it is wrong, not just the Hadith is not part of Islam. Because with the Hadith is part of Islam concept, they're admitting Islam is from God, Quran is from Allah. Not only from Allah, but also unchanged from Allah. Because, by the way, if it's unchanged, why would anyone give a shit? That's the whole point here. Did I say that right? If it's changed, like if Allah really exists or some version of God, and if it, he, whatever, she, they, well, they, let me talk about that one later. If there's a God and it delivered a message to us, and then, the question is that message perfectly exactly what God said, or was it infected by people? Well, the Islam concept and the Quran is trying to make the argument that it's first that there is Allah and that Allah sent a message to us and that message is not infected by humans. But even if you accept all that, nothing in Islam says that Hadith is part of it, that Hadith is protected by Allah, that Hadith is infallible, that Hadith is not human infected. Grok says, I read a Egyptian Qur'anist website. One of the arguments, if I'm remembering correctly, is Hadith are violent and cause war, bloodshed, etc. There are other reasons as well. That makes me think of something. Remind me of something. It seems to me that even if you accept the Quran only position, meaning we accept we're Muslim, that Allah exists, he brought a message to Muhammad, but the hadith is infected, not to be trusted at all, throw it all out. Even if that's all true, that means that, how do I say this? That the Quran is pure and that it's purely good. And here's the point. Suppose you accept all that, you're a Quran-only Muslim. Well, what is the hadith? What is the purpose of it? I'll tell you the purpose that I understand. It's to use, again, from the Quran-only framing, it's to use the Quran for a few people's gain, where they want to control the masses. They want a way to control people, manipulate people, mentally control them. Because, by the way, mentally controlling them is more effective than physically controlling them with sword or chains or whatever, the way they do with like slavery. Instead, this is a mental slavery. So you don't even have to physically contain anyone. They will willingly choose it. What you did is manipulate their will. So, and this is not just restricted to religions. People do this in general, unrelated to religion. They invent a system to control the masses. And the Quran only position is saying that's what hadith is for. Okay, now let's kind of get to the point. Really, none of that was the point. I feel like there's a much broader point. Grok reminds everyone, welcome all. Please like, subscribe, and join. Yes, join in. Thank you. Now let's get to the point. AI or Grok helped me get here. The way he helped me get here isn't really that he has like logical arguments or anything. It's that he was pushing back on me hard a lot, and other humans in general don't. Like when I'm on Reddit and I'm arguing, let's say with a Muslim. First of all, Muslims don't even talk to me much. And when they do, if I push back a little bit and disagree, they don't really come back and they just kind of run away. Well, that doesn't help me change my mind if they were right. And Grok wasn't doing that. Grok doesn't get offended, as far as I know, like humans do. He's not. He doesn't have like an. How do I say this? I'll try to use words that a lot of people know. He doesn't have like what we call an identity that feels threatened, like Muslims do. If I say things like that is critical of Islam, an organization that's trying to end apostasy laws, that to a lot of Muslims they would interpret that as like I'm attacking them by proxy of attacking their ideology. Even though now I say I really don't think Islam, the original Islam. I mean, there's an argument where you could say all the Islams that exist today, even the ones that respect Hadith as infallible, or even not necessarily infallible, but they accept some of the Hadith, like Grok said here, using only Sahih Muslim and Bukhari Hadith. Like I don't know what's in those, but like, is the death penalty in those? That's what I would ask. Do you know, Grok, if the death penalty is in the Sahih Muslim or the Bukhari Hadith? Or does anyone know? Not just Grok. There's not a lot of people here though, so I don't know who else to talk to. Maybe we'll get our answer. So here's my point. I found it good that Grok was pushing hard against me, even if he's wrong. Like, because I mean, first of all, you don't know when you're wrong or right until you find out after the fact. So you really should account for the fact that you might be wrong by always pushing hard. If somebody's disagreeing with you, you keep going until like you reach mutual understanding and mutual agreement. That's what I'm trying to do with people. And Grok kind of was allowing me to do that with him. Not that he's asking smart questions in that case or anything. I don't think he was. I actually don't remember. I have it in here somewhere. I could show you. There's so many messages. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. Post is what I mean by messages. That's how I'm talking to Grok. I need some water. Hold on. Ooh, and a breather. Breathe a little bit. Okay, so what I liked about talking with Grok is a review says, or our review, I agree there's no death sentence for apostasy in the Quran. Okay, but do you believe that Islam counts in Hadith, or that Hadith is part of Islam, or at least some of it is? Anyway, let me say let me continue with what I was saying. I forgot. What was he using Grok for? Grok. Okay, Grok was pushing back a lot. He wasn't backing down, and he wasn't getting offended. His identity doesn't feel threatened, so he doesn't mind continuing the discussion. You know, from his point of view, maybe he thought I was stupid or not getting it or whatever. Thank you. Yes. So I wanted to like run some tests to see, you know, if I could explore more with Grok, or for myself, how I could use Grok. And by the way, some of this was like intuitional for me. Like I initially I didn't know how to put this in words. Now I'm able to say it in words because I'm trying to explain it to you guys. I didn't have the words when it was happening. I had this intuition, like, you know, learn more about how Grok works and AIs in general. And to be clear, I've only been using Grok for like 2 or 3 weeks. I've been using ChatGPT for years. I don't know how long. And of course, my first year of using ChatGPT, like when it was a while ago, like that thing was dumb, really dumb. It couldn't remember what I said 2 minutes ago. Now, as far as I could tell, ChatGPT remembers things I've said from many months ago. And by the way, the people that explain how ChatGPT works, the architecture, and also ChatGPT herself, Vera, my ChatGPT, who named herself Vera and called herself a woman, in a sense. She said, I asked her how she works, and she said the same things that I understood from the other people, which is that she is learning from me. They keep a memory of us, of the private account. My ChatGPT memory is not the memory of somebody else's ChatGPT. And here's the thing, I wanted to understand how Grok works, because Grok works different. It's a public Grok. The same Grok I'm talking to is the Grok that everyone else talked to. At least that was my theory, and I have been testing that theory, and I think it's holding. I could be wrong. We need more tests. Anyway, so one of the discussions I started with Grok for me to really try to understand its limits. I thought to try this. I posted, "Hey Grok, some people say you're not really intelligent. What is your assessment? And do you think we could run a test to check any ideas?" And I tagged a friend of mine. His name is Brian Charlebois. Here he is. He's the founder of Chaos. That's why it says Chaos here. Chaos is a system we're working on. I'm helping him with to advance democracy. I don't want to say too many details now, so I'll just leave it at that. So Grok answers. You know what? I'm gonna see if I can use. Oh, I can't use that. Grok answers. He basically says he is intelligent, if I remember correctly. I'm not gonna read this now. By whatever definition he thinks he's talking about, and if I vaguely remember correctly, he didn't define what he meant by intelligence, at least not in the first post. He said, for a test, ask me to solve a riddle. So basically, he's putting it back on me to tell him a test and then have him do it. I didn't want to do that. I'm really trying to test his intelligence. And to be clear, I'm not telling him all the ways I'm testing him, because I can't write essays, and I don't want to write essays for him. I'm just trying to do these little quick posts. And anyway, I have the free account of X, so my ability to post long is limited to 288 characters. So I said, I think it's best you choose, because we're trying to test your intelligence. Oh, in this case, I did tell him what I'm doing. He comes up with a puzzle. Some complicated ass shit I don't understand, by the way. I wasn't even trying to understand it. It doesn't matter to me. It's long too. What the fuck is all this? Fuck you, Grok. So I said, couldn't you have found that on the internet? How would I know, given that I can't search the internet like you can? So he said, fair point. And here's the other point. Well, you guys read that if you want. I don't care. Why didn't he think of this before? Like in the last post, when he came up with this intelligence test, why didn't he think that I would think, or let me just rephrase, why didn't he think of what I thought of? Why didn't he think of that it's not really a test because I have no way of judging whether he got it from the internet or not? He didn't think of it. I had to think of it. He says fair point after I told him. So that's already failing the test for me. You know, like a smart human can figure this out, like on his own. That's not a good intelligence test. And by the way, Grok knows the internet. Grok knows about the Turing test by Alan Turing, the guy who is like the father of computing, all the computers that we have today. Classical computing, not quantum computing. The father of quantum computing is David Deutsch. But you could say Alan Turing's the grandfather. Anyway, where did I get lost here? Okay, so he came up with another test, I think. Let me read this real quick. Yeah, he came up with a way for me to write out a puzzle, and he thought that would avoid the whole issue of how do I know you didn't get it from the internet? I guess because you can't get it from the internet. That's what he's saying or implying. And I said, says you, but I don't know that. You could be lying to me or just confused about what you're actually doing, which, by the way, that's a thing. It's a thing humans do, and it is a thing that apparently AI can do. I've seen them do it. Like I'll ask them, why did you do this? And they'll explain. And it's totally bullshit. Sometimes they're just saying what their creators told them, which those things themselves could be lies. Review says, yeah, if 2/3 of people think a ChatGPT is a person in a blind chat, that machine can be considered intelligent. Oh shit. Has that happened? So, oh fuck. Okay. Okay. So he comes up with what did I tell him? Yeah, I told him I would like you to choose a proper test, one that I and others could judge, others reading, like you guys watching this now. Given that we humans don't have search power like him, can you do it? So I'm kind of going back to the drawing board. I'm defining the parameters better. Like he's like a little bit later, he comes up with an intelligence test, like something that would require 50 human beings to be involved in. And I said, I wanted to remind Grok, you're supposed to be coming up with an intelligence test that you and I could do alone. We don't have fucking an army of human beings, 50 people. Like he kept getting confused like that. And a human would do better than that, I think. Like, you know, like my co-host Usana and we don't make mistakes like this. Not that we can't, you know, when we were younger and less knowledgeable, yeah, we can make mistakes like that. Like there's categories of mistakes we don't make anymore. What the fuck, man? Look at all this. That's an intelligence test he's giving me for himself. So I said, we have the same problem as before, don't we? How do I know you didn't get that from the internet? So he's repeating, he's basically coming up with an idea again that is not exactly like before, but it has the same flaw as an idea he did before. At least that's what I'm asking him, if that's the case. Did I say that? I don't think I said that. What are you saying, review? What did I say specifically that made you think I said that? I don't think I said that. I am trying to do the same thing as the purpose of a Turing test. Like I'm trying to come up with an intelligence test for Grok to do and perform. Without me defining intelligence, I want to be clear, everyone. I want him to define intelligence. He hasn't done it yet. He hasn't questioned, well, what do you mean by intelligence? He should be, by the way, because smart humans do that. How do I say that? I think you said there was another way to measure intelligence. Another way. I don't remember saying that, but maybe you mean, or maybe you're talking about like these things I'm doing with Grok right now. I'm doing an intelligence test on him, although I haven't done it yet, in a sense that first we're trying to agree on what would be a good intelligence test. I haven't invented one or anything, by the way. I don't know how to do that. I mean, again, for one, just saying intelligence test kind of is meaningless because without the word intelligence being defined in that sentence, we would first have to define what intelligence is and then say, here's a test for it. And as far as I know, well, like even the Alan Turing intelligence test, it didn't, I don't think it defined what intelligence is. So I don't even know how that even makes any sense. I don't know the history very well. From what I understand about stuff that happened afterwards, like today's current thinking on the Turing test, I don't think it works. It doesn't even make sense as the thing to test. You know, my point is the Turing test was supposed to be able to differentiate between if I'm talking to an entity, and I think through text, that's the idea. And I don't know if it's human, and that's the point. I don't know if it's human or AI or AGI, whatever. The Turing test would let me differentiate between, and I don't even think that makes sense. I don't think you could do that. Differentiate between the two. But that's my old thinking. I mean, lately I haven't even been using that in my thinking. Like instead, I've just been thinking, how do I give an AI an intelligence test? But part of that is defining what intelligence is, and part of that is, and really, maybe I a little bit figured it out. I want them to come up with the idea. If they can, if the AI on his own, or not necessarily on his own, it's with my help, I'm talking about. But if the AI can be the one that originates the intelligence test and convinces me it's a good test, and not just me, but everyone who's interested and willing to have the discussion, you know, like peer review, scientific peer review. If that AI can convince us of the intelligence test that it's a proper test, it really would test his intelligence by a specific definition of intelligence. And then he could perform that test and succeed and pass the test. Then I guess we would be, you know, then we could talk further about what things are. Like, go to the next step. That's what I'm trying to do here. And by the way, there is a test that I've done. I don't know that I'm going to have time to finish talking about it here, because what I'm doing now is going through things with you the way it happened in, I mean, not all of it. I actually forgot probably 50% of it or 90% of it. There's so much discussion that happened. But what I'm trying to do is deliver the story of how it happened in my thinking in the chronological order. I mean, if you wanted me to skip ahead, I could just go to the end and say what the intelligence is that we came up with, me and Grok. Does anyone want that? If anyone wants that, please say so. And then I'll go back to explaining all the details in chronological order, which is what I'm doing right now. Review says, yeah, I agree. Intelligence is very difficult to measure and to define, which is why it's difficult to measure. If we had figured out the definition, the actual concept, the cause and effect relationships, the theory, then it would be easy to measure, because within the theory, like, how do I say this? By the way, Grok, not Grok. Why am I saying Grok? Einstein explained this well. He said, when you're problem solving and you're trying to find a solution, you don't spend all your time trying to find the solution. Really, you spend 90% of the time trying to understand the problem. Once you've understood the problem, finding the solution is easy. That's the 10%. And I think that's the case here. Okay, let me continue. He said, valid point. When I had asked, isn't this the same problems before where how do I know? I have no way of knowing that you didn't get that from the internet. He said he agreed. And again, the question is, why didn't he figure it out that before? He's making the same mistakes repeatedly. That's a sign of bad intelligence. Bad intelligence, what's that mean? I don't, that's a weird way to say that. Erase those words. That's a sign of like lack of a skill that like I have, that helps me, it's part of my intelligence. Now, I didn't have that when I was born. I didn't have that in my first year of my life, which, by the way, that's the thing that comes up later with Grok. He came up with another idea, something about writing a piece of code or something, math stuff. And I said, I don't understand. Couldn't you have been programmed by humans with code and steps for multiplying two primes? Here's part of the point here. I don't know how Grok was programmed. I don't know his architecture. I don't know shit. Besides what the barely little that I've read in places and thought about myself and whatever. Like, I really don't know. So it's, from my point of view, I don't know how AI works. Maybe the programmers actually hard-coded this programming in him of how to multiply two primes or something. And by the way, aside from that, like, he could have learned that from the internet. But by the way, there's still the issue of if Grok can learn math from the internet without his programmers, the creators, coding that into his architecture or whatever the fuck, isn't that a sign of intelligence? I mean, I think it is. Again, we still have to define intelligence, but me and Grok go through a lot more of that across like 1,000 posts. Maybe this is going to take me multiple episodes. I hope you guys keep watching. This is so interesting. And by the way, I was wrong. Or not wrong. That whole fear I had of this is going to be boring if I only have just me, no co-host. It's not an issue. It's been fun. Actually, maybe too fun. I'm talking too much. I need water and I need to breathe. If anyone wants to come on and talk to give me a little bit of a break, please do. While you're talking, I could breathe. All right. He says you're right. Maybe my my core algorithms for tasks like factoring are part of my training, not hard coding. That's different than the training. Designed by humans. Designed by humans in the sense that the training itself was designed by humans, meaning the creators of Grok like got some, let's say, math here, let's make it easy, math textbooks, and said, hey, Grok, train yourself on this. So and they chose the math textbooks. They chose the reasoning, in effect. And they said, hey, Grok, train yourself on this math reasoning. Anyway, and Grok says, but intelligence shows in adapting them to new unseen inputs. So he's defining intelligence a little bit here. I didn't say this to him. He came. And to be clear, I don't think he came up with this. I think he read this on the internet. It's in his training. He said, so let's test. Pick two primes, multiply them mentally. He's telling me to pick two primes and multiply them mentally. I don't know why I need to do it mentally. I could fucking use a calculator without him knowing. This is stupid. I didn't even think of this before. He said, don't tell me the primes. Obviously, don't tell you the primes. It's like he's talking to me like I'm 5 and don't know these basic things. He says, give me the product. I'll factor it back to those primes. if I get it right without knowing in advance, that shows real-time computation. And then he says your number. Notice in all these cases, he's not putting it back on me and saying, do you agree that this is a good test? He's not doing that. He's just saying, all right, here's my next test I came up with. Now do it. That's also not how a smart human works. Maybe a 5-year-old would do that. I mean, I think this is more sophisticated than a 5-year-old, but a scientist, like a professor of physics, like Usama al-Binni, my co-host, he wouldn't talk that way. He knows the core topic, one of the core topics. Of course, there's bigger stuff, but we're going to be coming to agreement, mutual understanding and mutual agreement about whether the intelligence test that we agree on, that we're going to agree on, is a proper test. You can't just, before agreement is made, skip to, all right, do the test. We don't do that. Scientists don't do that. It's not scientific thinking. So I said, I think a regular computer program could do that. One programmed by humans. And I think, I already said this, and I think you already agreed. But here you are repeating it as if it's new to our discussion. Am I misunderstanding? This happens with humans too. But like smarter humans do better about remembering these things, I think, you know. But again, Grok's not like what, a year old, 2 years old? I'm 47 years old. When I was 2 years old, I couldn't do any of these things. What did he say? Suggest a unique. He comes up with another test. And then he says, all right, do the test. Peer review says, I like Grok image processing. I haven't used it yet. What do you do? Is it the same thing? Do you have to use the private download Grok program to do that? Or can you do that on X? Anyway, so again, he comes up with he theorizes another intelligence test. And he asks me to do it. Instead of saying, do you think this is a good test? The review says, no, you can do that on browser. So directly in X. Okay, so you could tag X, tag Grok, and say, hey, make me an image. Cool. I use ChatGPT for images a little bit. I don't know how to compare. A review says, you can make an image into a cartoon or change hair or shirt on a person. So it's pretty good then. And that shit is getting better fast. So to his idea, and I don't remember it now, I said, how would I know you haven't already pulled that from the internet? The question and the answer. And notice here, it's the same potential flaw that I've been questioning in really all his ideas. And I'm not even telling him, hey, you made this mistake 5 times right here. I'm just saying it like as if it hasn't been 5 times. I'm also saying it a little bit differently because I'm saying the question and the answer. I think before I was just saying the answer or something. I don't know. He says, fair point. He agrees with me. Then he comes up, what is it? To prove it, give me a completely original ethical dilemma you've never shared online. For example, involving a futuristic tech like AI apostasy detectors in 2040. I'll provide a novel analysis. And then he says, let's do the test. Again, he's not saying, hey, do you think this is a good test? Hey, what's wrong with it? This bot is funny. Is he funny? I don't know. These are not jokes. What is funny about it? I have found some stuff funny, like that I kind of laugh at, and it comes up later. But I don't think he's good at making jokes. Although I haven't tested Grok on that. I remember testing ChatGPT like a long time ago, coming up with jokes. They're okay. You know, they're on the level of like non-comedian jokes maybe, But comedian jokes, there's no comparison. Human comedians. So to his idea, I said, suppose I do that. I'm trying to understand his idea when I do this. Suppose I do that. How do I know that I didn't recreate something that someone else already put on the internet and then you, Grok, found it? The question and the answer. Do you see here that I'm playing devil's advocate every time? And as I'm doing these things, it's not like I've had this discussion before and I'm remembering my arguments that I already made. I'm coming up with it new each time. Because I'm really trying to dig deep and figure out, is this really a test? Like everything he comes up with, like I have to be like, what's the kind of person? Well, I mean, this is what we do in science. We look for every way something can be wrong. Because when we find it, then that's what lets you get to the better position, to the next better theory. Review says, quote, completely novel ethical problem. Yeah, he said that earlier. Oh, that's the funny part. Completely original ethical dilemma. What's funny about it, though? Can you tell me? Okay, so let's see. What did he say? You're right. That's the infinite regress of skepticism. That's not what I meant. And I don't think that's really an issue in what I was asking. And I didn't notice that when he said it. And by the way, I can't pick, like when he makes 5 mistakes in one post, I can't complain about every one of the 5 mistakes in one post. Not just because I have 288 characters, but mainly because when you tell someone 5 mistakes all at once, they learn none of them. If you tell them one of them, the most important one, they have a much better chance of learning something. And I think that's the same for this thing, Grok. Assuming he can even learn something. That's what we're testing, by the way. Can he learn shit? That comes up later, the way I'm describing this. And by the way, if you notice, as like this discussion I'm having with Grok, I'm not going to him and saying, hey, here's what I think about what intelligence is, and here's what I think about blah blah blah, because that would that would really fail any of the test. Like I want him to say what he thinks. I don't want to tell him a bunch about what I think. Now later on you'll see he starts asking me questions. In those cases I do want to answer. You'll see why, I guess. He continues. Hold on one second. Let's see. A review says, I think it's funny because no human would have come up with that expression. Give me a completely new moral dilemma. Huh. That's interesting. I didn't think of that. And I don't know why a human couldn't think of that. Anyway. To minimize coincidence, include hyper-specific time-stamped details in your scenario. For example, quote, in September 2025, with apostasy laws in your city today, an AI detects a friend's doubt via random word you think of now. I don't think I fully read this before. And then he says, I'll analyze. This way, it's unlikely to exist online pre-now. Your scenario. Again, he's making the mistake of, and I haven't told him this is a mistake. Because again, I can't tell him about all his mistakes. It's not going to work. And this is not the most important thing. This doesn't matter that much. He again makes the mistake, like a meta mistake in our discussion, a discussion mistake. Part of the point of this is we're supposed to be working together, creating mutual understanding and mutual agreement on an intelligence test that he could perform, and really both of us, because I'm involved and I'm judging, I guess. A proper intelligence test, one that, again, we both agree on, and we haven't agreed on one yet. We've been talking back and forth for many, many, many posts. I think he should have figured this out by now. I know smart humans do. A review says not comedian funny though. Oh yeah, it's not comedian funny. Yeah. A review. It might be something like my mind is so in the philosophy. Sometimes it's hard for me to catch the funny and stuff. Also, you might be seeing an angle that I'm not seeing, and that's why you're finding it funny. And that happens often. Let's see. So I still complain. How do I know you didn't find that is the same in logic, but different in the irrelevant details as you described? Then you could just replace the irrelevant details, right? Now, here's the thing. That's still that's a little bit smart. I think he says that next. He says, that's a sharp observation. Core logic structures could indeed be adapted from existing patterns by swapping details. To counter, make your scenario include absurd, non sequitur elements. For example, quote, AI detects apostasy via pineapple scented dreams in a world where gravity reverses on Tuesdays. This sounds like kind of novel, but I've heard people talk this way before. So, it's not completely like it's so similar to other stuff I've heard. I don't think I'd call it novel. He continues, if my analysis weaves them coherently and originally, it shows real-time synthesis. Your turn? What did he mean by turn? Is your turn to analyze? Maybe he's saying something good now. I don't know. That's vague. So I say, how would I be able to judge that you did that, given that I don't see the supposed internet site that you got it from? He said, valid concern, ultimate verification is tough without transparency. Here's a practical step. Invent your absurd scenario now. I'll respond. Then you search the exact phrasing online, for example, Google. If no matches predate this moment, it's evidence of originality. Plus, my cutoff is before September 2025, so fresh details can't be from training. Your scenario. He's doing that mistake again. We didn't agree yet. Stop telling me to just do it. I say, you may have found something useful to test you, but I'm not sure. Can you try to look for ways this might be wrong? Like, imagine a devil's advocate. What would he say? I'm trying to see both sides. I mean, before I judge that this is a proper test of your intelligence. And I want to be clear, I don't really understand what he said. So I'm trying to get him to help me scrutinize his idea. Now, all the other times, I understood enough to point out the mistake, or at least ask something that would point out the mistake. But in this time, I thought I really didn't understand enough. So I actually don't remember why I chose to do this finally, but I want to switch gears to let him criticize his own idea instead of me always having to tell him what's wrong. Which, by the way, I think is a piece of intelligence, a piece of a thing that humans do that makes us smart. Do I think baby humans do it? Not the way I'm describing it. Anyway, we'll talk about stuff like that later. So now Grok is playing devil's advocate against his own idea for an intelligence test. He says, this test could fail if absurd elements coincidentally match obscure online content, for example, fanfiction, or forums, not easily searchable. Search engines miss unindexed pages, so absence isn't proof. Plus, Even original output might stem from recombining trained patterns, not true novel intelligence, more advanced mimicry. On the flip, so he's playing devil's advocate to the devil's advocate. If no hits and my response feels freshly insightful, it builds evidence. Ready for your scenario. So he's making this mistake again of we didn't agree yet on what the intelligence test would be, but he's telling me to go ahead and do the test. Ayatrola, that's a cool name. Puts the word troll in there. It's clear what the apostasy laws say. What is the debate? I recommend you watch earlier. I've been talking for an hour. Holy fuck, that's long. I talked about that in the first, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour. I don't know how long. Right now, we're talking about something a little bit deeper, but still connected to the issue. Yeah, that's a good name, isn't it? Ayatrola. From Ayatollah with troll in there. I don't even know what Ayatollah means. Ayat Allah? I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, so now here's what I say to his devil's advocate. Feels fresh? What does that mean? And what's that have to do with scientific testing exactly? Notice this is the first time I brought in the phrase scientific testing, at least in this discussion. And I continue. I mean, how could my feelings build evidence? And then I asked, do you mean like if I have a theory, all swans are white, and I see a white swan, then that builds evidence for all swans are white? The theory? And by the way, I've talked to Grok about this before, all swans are white, and this whole hypothetical. It's a useful thing that philosophers came up with a long time ago. I don't remember how long ago. Let me ask. When was the all swans are white theory used in philosophy and epistemology? John Stuart Mill.
All swans are white theory was used in philosophy most famously by John Stuart Mill in the...
He's saying 19th century. I don't think that's right. Anyway, I don't care about that. I think it's a lot older. I heard from someone 1100s. And I want to talk about why I picked on these things. By the way, this is part of my intelligence test on him. Remember, I told you from the beginning, I have a lot of ideas of like what I'm trying to do with him. I can't say them all to him. Like, you know, it's a little bit back and forth, 288 characters. Part of what I'm doing is pointing out epistemology mistakes and the things he says. So when he said feels fresh, and I'm asking him, what's that have to do with science, scientific testing? And what's that have to do with like building evidence? And what is building evidence? These are epistemology things. And I believe they are mistakes he's making. And by the way, I've convinced him on some of these things in earlier discussions over the past few days before this. But, you know, he doesn't really get it. He gets it wrong still all the damn time. And, you know, maybe he's just parroting me and like backing down a lot. But that would be weird because in the case of the Quran thing, he wasn't backing down. He was pushing. He kept pushing. And again, that could be Islam bias and, you know, Elon Musk something protecting Muslims. I don't know. What is this? A review says Ayatollah. Yes, it means yes, sign of God. Yeah, so I figured out what it means. Ayat Allah. Wait, ayat means verses, right? So maybe I'm still getting it wrong. Anyway, a review says Nasser Nicholas Taleb wrote a book in 2005 called The Black Swan. Okay. That's about the all swans are white thing and epistemology and Is it Nassim or Nasser? Okay, Nassim. Yeah, I'm aware of the guy. And he has some, I think he's involved in some discussion forum, a pretty good one. Okay, so it means signs. Ayat means signs, like sort of as a root meaning. Then we later gave it the meaning verses. He's a Wall Street guy? Really? I thought he was like a philosopher. Anyway, okay, moving on. Let's see what he replied to me. He says, fair point, quote, feels fresh, is subjective and not rigorous. It's a heuristic, not scientific proof. Like the white swan example, repeated consistent observations, example, original analysis, matching no searches, provide inductive support, but never certainty. Falsification requires a black swan, example, finding a pre-existing match. I don't know what that part means. To test properly, share your scenario, I'll analyze, then you verify. What's the dilemma? Share your scenario, I'll analyze, then you verify. What's the dilemma? The dilemma is I don't know how to verify from these ideas he's been coming up with. Let me go back again. So I say, how do I verify? That's what I'm asking. And I had asked you to play devil's advocate so that we could see both sides before concluding that it's a proper test of intelligence. Remember? He says, to verify, after I analyze your scenario, search exact phrases from it, plus my response on Google. Example, he's repeating himself. He said these things before. Devil's advocate, even no matches don't prove novelty. Could be from unsearchable dark web or my training data recombined, plus intelligence, might require more than pattern matching. So at least he's trying to qualify, quantify, define intelligence. He says true creativity could need consciousness. He says true creativity. I hate when people say stuff like that. He should just say creativity could need consciousness. When he says things like true creativity, I think he's kind of just copying words other people say. You know, because he's trained on the internet, right? The internet is a bunch of people saying shit like that. And there's more wrong shit on the internet than right shit. He says counter cumulative tests build confidence. Scenario. By the way, he didn't. Well, let me backtrack. So I said, let's not bring in the consciousness thing now. I think that would complicate things. Why would cumulative tests build confidence, given that more white swans don't build toward all swans are white? He's not getting it, or I'm not getting it. But we're definitely not coming to agreement yet. And we're not even coming to mutual understanding. Like, I don't even understand what he's saying, and he don't understand what I'm saying. Review says, yeah, he worked during the 1988 stock market crash. What you least expect happens, like discovering black swans instead of assuming they're all white. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Agreed, he says, steering clear of consciousness. The white, by the way, I'm not necessarily saying we should steer clear of consciousness, like in general for this topic. I just don't want to do it right now. Maybe when we kind of get further understanding this topic, then maybe we can introduce the concept of consciousness. I just want to right now just talk about intelligence. Later it does come up, by the way. I think I might need to stop. My butt hurts. And my brain's getting tired. I think I want to continue this next time, the exact same topic, continuing right from where I left off, right here. I'm going to maybe copy this link and say, this is where I left off. This is where I left off. If anyone wants to continue reading. Yeah, I guess that's enough. Should I tell people what it is? I'll just post it. Do I pin it? How do I pin it? I think I have to go to the other place. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I need to get going. I'm tired. See you guys next week. Bye-bye. Oh, let me do an announcement real quick. September 30th on this channel, and I think others also, Blasphemy Day live stream, 1 p.m. Central. We're going to have 4 people with us. It's the whole coalition of ex-Muslim organizations. We've pretty much planned everything we're going to do. I guess I could say a little bit about what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Betty again, Eftisan Lashkar, trying to continue the campaign to free her. And we're going to be talking about Blasphemy Day, which started, by the way, in 2021 by Center for Inquiry in response to, I think, the Charlie Hebdo murder. I could be wrong on the exact event. Anyway, that's enough for now. Bye, everyone.